Now, what if I got paid a tenth of a penny every time I smiled at another human being? That might change my behavior.
Welcome to CHATROG. I'm Roger Steare, the corporate philosopher. Today I'm joined by futurist philosopher, author and speaker Richard Watson. Richard has spent many years helping us think about the future, not as something inevitable, but as something we can actively shape. Through his Now and Next blog and books like Digital versus Human, he explores how technologies such as artificial intelligence might transform the way we live, work, and even define what it means to be human. In this conversation, we'll explore the opportunities AI presents, identify the ethical risks it poses, and discuss how we can make informed choices that preserve human purpose and creativity in our future. Richard, welcome to the CHATROG podcast.
Thank you, Roger. Nice to be here.
Well, it's lovely to have you again. And just so that our viewers know, you and I have known each other for about 10 years. So if it feels sometimes very familiar, it's because of that. We just haven't become the bromance in a few moments. So let's dive in. On your blog, you've written about both the promises and perils of AI. Do you see AI primarily as a tool for augmenting human capabilities, or as something that risks diminishing what makes us human?
Well, I think on balance, at the moment, it's looking negative. I mean, there are plenty of cheerleaders for AI, so I don't think I need to do that. You know, we know what it can do in medicine, materials, climate change. It's got a lot of uses, and and that's essentially what we have right now is pretty good. You know, if you want to call that narrow AI, weak AI, be my guest. My worry, I mean, well, maybe we could talk about AGI later, because that's a whole different thing. But interested in what we have right now. And what is worrying me is the sort of rollout of things like ChatGPT, the sort of consumer end of it, where I'm not quite sure what it's for. And I went to a conference many years ago, and 2-day conference on AI. And the first 2 days pretty much were taken up with how can we do this? And they're talking about AGI essentially. Artificial general intelligence, where broadly a machine is as an intelligence as a human being across all measures. And there was lots of chat about that. And there was lots of chat about things that could go wrong, quite rightly. But right until the end, there was no debate about, well, why are we actually doing this? And a good answer was because we're going to run out of humans. And this is the sort of Elon Musk argument to some extent. And this is true. You know, population is on the edge of severe decline in places you wouldn't even expect, like China. And we can see this already in Japan. So having machines that can replace humans is really useful somewhere like Japan, in theory. So, you know, using machines instead of humans in kindergartens or in elderly care homes, etc. But there are a lot of sort of issues around it. I mean, in terms of, I might go slightly off subject here, but if we maybe just start with, I mean, first of all, you know, what exactly is it? And that could take up a day. I mean, you know, what exactly do we mean by intelligence? And I think the reason we're so fascinated with AI at the moment is that we've sort of we've wrongly associated intelligence with being a uniquely human trait. And therefore, we feel threatened by something else that can think, which is complete nonsense, because animals can think, plants can think. It's a complete spectrum. But nevertheless, it's slightly freaked us out. But why are we doing it? Okay, well, we might need to replace humans at some level. We can replace humans doing dull and boring jobs, which we've been doing for quite a long time. I mean, if the Industrial Revolution was about replacing human muscle, this is about replacing human thinking. It's the automation of human thinking and decision making. And obviously the threat is more to sort of the middle classes and skilled jobs than low skill or no skill. So that's broadly what's going on here. But beyond that, why are we doing it? I think the same old reasons. It's about money. There's a bit of a gold rush going on at the moment, or people think they're going to make a lot of money. And at the moment, they are making a lot of money. I'm not convinced it's going to last. It's about power, economic power, political power, individual power. It's about fear. You know, the US in particular is worried about China getting there, wherever there is before them. I think it's an intellectual challenge. It's a difficult thing to do if we're jumping back to AGI. So it's an interesting thing to try and do. But I think fundamentally you have to look at whose interests are being served by artificial intelligence. And I don't think it's mine. I don't think it's yours. I think it's fundamentally about control. And the crux of it is for governments, it's about controlling people and it's about reducing cost. And for corporations, it's about making loads of money. And my fundamental worry about all this is it's really what we're really looking at here is the rendering of human behavior, emotions, thoughts, and biology into data, which is then sold without our explicit consent. And at the moment, okay, big deal. We get some personalized ads. I could live with some personalized ads. It's not the end of the world. But I think what people are trying to do ultimately is control human behavior at scale for commercial or governmental benefit.
It sounds very Orwellian. And I'm just wondering, we've had another guest who's talked about, if you like, this control through AI via governments and corporations, if you like, a digital equivalent of religious practice and control. What do you think about that analogy?
Yeah, I mean, it's not dictators like Putin we should be aware of. It's digital dictators. AI bureaucracies where there are no people. Yeah, computer says no. No accountability. It doesn't need to explain itself. It can't explain itself. It just makes a decision. You can't argue with it. There's no transparency, completely opaque algorithms. And we've already seen where this goes. This is the Post Office Horizon scandal. This is, in the Netherlands where they used AI to detect fraud and it went horribly wrong. I mean, it ended up getting rid of the government. It went so horribly wrong. People died. And there's this assumption that this stuff will work and won't go wrong. Where's the evidence for that? It's made by humans. Of course, it's going to go wrong. It's enhancing all of the human biases and inequalities we've already got. And this idea that there's this sort of perfect machine that makes perfect decisions is really quite terrifying. And it's a complete accountability shield, both for government and the corporations creating this stuff. And I suppose the pinnacle of this would be fully autonomous weapons, where the weapons will decide whom to target and nobody's responsible because, it was the machine that did it and the machine can't explain why it did it. I mean, at the cutting edge of this stuff, we've got systems that the developers, they don't know how it's working. So to me, this is deeply, deeply problematic. And then you've got all of the issues around social media and fake news where we're not quite sure whether it's real or whether it isn't, which is deeply destabilizing. So I think it is pretty Orwellian. I mean, we're on the cusp of, we've already got in some countries, emotion detecting machines, effective computing. And there is a sort of dream out there in certain circles to predict what people are going to do next. I mean, Google, I think, probably already think they can do that, and to some extent they can, but we actually want to get inside people's heads and work out what their emotion is and work out whether that's a threat to somebody. And I find that deeply troubling.
And I'm just wondering, you mentioned the different types of AI at the top. So we know that the ability of very dedicated AIs for detecting cancers for oncologists or flagging up ones that they, the human, need to look at. And I think lots of people will echo your fears around certainly generative AI and the way that it's being boosted in terms of raising money and all the rest of it. And it's dangerous for people who use it incorrectly. But what do you see as the positives? Where, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you use AI for good?
Well, I think it should enhance human thinking and decision making, not replace it. I mean, my fundamental problem with AI is there's an awful lot of money going into it, and it's deeply extractive and exploitative, which maybe we can come back to in a second in terms of sort of sustainability and human labor and so on and so forth. But we have, I mean, artificial general intelligence, I don't think is a problem we have right now trying to solve that. We have some much bigger, more solvable problems. The primary one is probably climate change. The impact of climate change on food, water, energy, conflict, destabilization, poverty, and all the rest of it. We can use AI to try and solve those problems along with humans. And they are deeply solvable and they're not that difficult to solve. They just need money and human and machine intelligence. And that, I mean, climate would be a classic, and resources. And yet we've created this thing that nobody's really quite sure what it's for, that is, when I say deeply extractive, people think the cloud's this sort of fairy dust. The cloud is made of fossil fuels, lithium, copper, cobalt. We are extracting things out of the earth at vast cost to make this stuff work. I mean, the energy required by AI systems and data centers alone is phenomenal. The water that's used to cool the data centers is phenomenal. The environmental destruction is absolutely phenomenal. The emissions doesn't even get a thought. I mean, we're all sort of well, not all, but people are boycotting aviation because of emissions. AI and data is far more dangerous in terms of emissions than aviation, but that doesn't even get talked about. It's like these problems are sort of shifted somewhere else. So we're actually making some problems worse with these technologies, not better. And I think that's deeply problematic.
So you were talking a little earlier about harnessing the best of machine intelligence and human intelligence. What would that look like in
Well, I
your
mean,
view?
you mentioned cancer, I think, a minute ago. I mean, radiology, surgery. Machines are far better at humans doing radiology or being surgeons. I mean, I'm thinking of the Da Vinci autonomous robotic surgical system, for example. But I'm not sure they should be left totally to do it alone. I mean, they should be working together as a team, if you like. And there is a danger here of, I don't want to get totally negative, but there is a danger of de-skilling radiologists, or, pilots don't fly planes anymore. Computers fly planes. Hey, so let's get rid of the pilot and the crew because that would save us a lot of money. Well, fine, until there's some kind of problem and the system doesn't work, and then you might need the pilot. The problem is the pilot has lost confidence in his own or her own skills now. So again, this binary thing of replacing humans purely with machines is quite dangerous. But when you've got them working together, then that combination is absolutely awesome. I'm vaguely aware of I hope I haven't made this up, but I'm pretty certain that, yes, a computer can beat a grandmaster at chess, but a computer plus a grandmaster can definitely beat a computer at chess. I'm pretty certain that's correct. So that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. Or look at education. It fills me with terror to think about small children totally being educated by an AI system or an avatar or a chatbot. I think that's a bad thing. But if you use that in the classroom with human teachers, then that's a very good thing. Equally, in elder care, I mean, there's a robot called Paro in the shape of a seal, which is a very clever piece of technology. I mean, it's essentially a sort of robot, and how you respond to it changes how it responds to you. And it's used for people with dementia. Now, used in combination with human care, I think that's a very good thing. But if you just throw that robot into a care home and just sort of leave people with it, I think that's a bad thing. So again, it's around sort of combinations. I mean, computers are far better at humans than extracting patterns from vast amounts of data. We could never compete with that. But I think it still needs humans to ask what the right question is. And at the moment, we've got a very small part of society, part of the world, deploying this technology as though it's the answer, as though it's progress, without anyone else being consulted about what the question might be.
Indeed, indeed. So let's look at the world of work for a moment, and perhaps we can go a bit deeper into this. How do we build this partnership between machine intelligence and human intelligence? And you're right in your analogy about the pilots. If you're right, planes are on autopilot most of the time, but how are the pilot's going to learn how to fly a plane when the system fails? And we've had the same problem with paralegals and junior lawyers whose jobs are being replaced by AI. How are they going to learn to become lawyers and so on?
I mean, maybe an example here is computers in offices. I mean, when I started work, there were no computers. They came in, word processing, etc., and we just used them as tools, and we became faster and better at our jobs as a result. Essentially, if you've got a job that involves sitting at a table all day, staring at a screen, inputting data, outputting data, looking at patterns within data, I think you probably should look at retraining rather rapidly. And I don't think that would be a bad thing, because I personally would regard that as quite a dull job. I can't imagine that gives very much satisfaction. And there's a lot of chat about, I'm thinking of the Frey and Osborne study in Oxford donkey's years back about somewhere anything between 30 and almost 50% of jobs disappearing. And we hear sort of similar things on a regular basis. And it's all going to be okay because we're going to invent new jobs. Well, maybe. I mean, the Industrial Revolution displaced a load of people, and they eventually did get new jobs, but a lot of them were worse jobs, and some people never got a new job. It took a generation for the new jobs to show up. So, got to be a bit careful about that one. I mean, the thing about most jobs that is forgotten is that you are dealing with people, rational, crazy, illogical, emotional people. God forbid you might actually have to manage them or inspire them. Now, machines aren't terribly good at that. And I think a lot of those jobs are pretty safe. I mean, if you are dealing with people in terms of managing them, selling to them, buying from them, inspiring them, I'd say your job was relatively safe. I mean, and medicine actually are two very good examples of that. Um, I mean, I recently had a tree fall on my head. I mean, it could have gone really wrong, and I could have had brain surgery. And the AI system surgery, I'm sure, would have been better than the human surgeon. But in the situation, I'd rather have a human squeeze my hand and tell me it's all right, even if secretly he went away and let the robot do it. You know, I'm looking for sort of Captain Kirk on the deck of the starship, really. There with education, it's you know, in early years, it's inherently social, and you know, we are inspired by teachers. It's not just about the acquisition of data and spitting it out. And actually, one of the problems with education in a lot of countries, particularly at the UK at the moment, is actually that's essentially what it's become. It's about learn this stuff, acquire it, and spit it out in an exam. Well, machines are unbelievably good at that. So, you know, okay, we do need to acquire information, but we also need to do stuff that the computers are really, really bad at, which takes you into the area or again of dealing with human beings, but it also takes you into areas of, you know, trying to find the right questions, critical thinking, dealing with fluid problems, curiosity, imagine that high level imagination. I mean, machines can be imaginative, creative, but not at the very high level, I would say. And again, it's that combination. And you know, I saw in education in the early years where kids were sort of thrown iPads and left to get on with it, and it was a disaster. But 10 years on, it seems to have found its level a bit, where it's a combination of the two. But yeah, I mean, some jobs will go. We will have new jobs, but I think I mean, I'm using AI. I was using it yesterday to do something, and it was phenomenally useful in terms of getting some basic information unbelievably quickly. And I was using it as a sort of springboard to go somewhere else. But if I'd simply used what was spat out, it was a bit predictable. And obviously it's going to get better, but I think possibly, I mean, it's an interesting thing whether we have already hit limits. I mean, Cal Newport was writing about this in New York Times quite recently about maybe this is as good as it gets, by the way. I mean, you know, AI is beginning to eat its own tail now because it's run out of things to read on the internet. The stuff it's reading on the internet is increasingly being generated by AI, hence the tail. And a lot of stuff that makes us intelligent isn't even digital. It doesn't exist on the internet. I mean, this is another complete fallacy that you can just sort of replicate a human brain that quickly and a computer is a human brain. They're very different things. Our intelligence is very different.
I love what you were saying about education. Our grandchildren are growing up in the Netherlands, where early years education up to the age of 7 or 8 is focused on building social relationships, becoming a good friend, student together, and so on and so forth. And you made me wonder whether or not the misuse of AI in classrooms is inevitable in systems like the UK, which are basically training kids to absorb and then regurgitate nonsense, because without the ability to think about it and what it means. And I think that's really profound. So I'd like to go on to some questions around the impact of machine learning, artificial intelligence on younger generations. In some ways, they're actually wiser than older grown-ups like you and I. You know, I know young children who are not watching YouTube shorts anymore because they say, quote unquote, they're rotting my brain, unquote. So what do you think we as older adults should be guiding? How should we be guiding our children and grandchildren as they grow up with this incredibly powerful but dangerous technology?
There is a problem with education, particularly in the UK, where the government sees it as the solution to everything, and doesn't seem terribly keen on regulating anything. I think the Australian government's going the right way. I mean, I don't think smartphones should be in school, period, until maybe 16, but I prefer 18. I mean, I prefer they weren't there at all. And classrooms don't bother me too much because you've got a responsible adult present. I'm worried about what the kid's up to outside of the classroom and at home. I mean, ages ago, I was speculating about people preferring the company of machines to people. I mean, it's happening. There is data suggesting that smallish children now prefer the company of machines to people. You are getting, I mean, you can go on eBay or Amazon right now and you can buy things attached to a pram to put the iPad to make rearing your child less bothersome because you just have them staring at YouTube videos all day, which, by the way, are designed to be pretty flippin' addictive. They can access, they're not stupid, they can access pretty much anything they want. I mean, and let's not forget, these technologies, I'm talking about social media here on iPhones, they are deliberately designed to be addictive. They are trying to get people to spend as much time on their platforms as possible because that makes them more money. I mean, it's the analogy here is or the example here is smoking. I mean, we know these things to be harmful. We know they're addictive, yet we're barely regulating them. And I think, and again, I'm not saying they're useless. Get rid of them totally necessarily, particularly when you get older. But it's around the balance and it's around understanding the harms. I mean, there was something in the paper a week or two ago about AI psychosis, and rather weirdly, I was watching that movie Her, which if people have not seen it, you have got to see Her, which has got to be 10, 15 years old now, about somebody forming a relationship with an operating system. You have now got children that are serious withdrawal symptoms when a phone or their AI is taken away from them. And it's understandable because these things are less complicated than people. People are difficult to deal with. I can be really awkward, and I can imagine people preferring to go online than deal with me sometimes. But where does that go? First of all, it's a completely asymmetric relationship. You are being played here. It's not real. People don't seem to sort of understand this. And I think where it ends up is a bunch of psychological problems and some severe problems around loneliness. Being unable to form, this is getting quite dystopic actually, isn't it? People being unable to form relationships with other people being unable to operate in work environments where there are other people around. And there are the early signs of this all over the place. I mean, Japan, South Korea are quite good examples, but you can find it in the UK.
So what practical advice would you give leaders in business and leaders in education and, of course, leaders in government about making responsible choices in AI adoption? I mean, that presumes that they know what the various forms of AI can do and shouldn't do.
I mean, I would think very carefully about why you're doing this. What are you trying to achieve? What is this, again, what is this for? And how might it help you? But to just blindly throw it into a school or a workplace. I mean, I know of very large organizations in the US, one being a very large tech organization where people are being forced to use this stuff without really being told why they're supposed to be using it. And it's backfiring terribly because you're getting some very bad decisions. I mean, actually going back to education, we're now getting a crazy situation where teachers are using AI to set homework. The kids are using AI to do the homework, and the teachers are then using AI to mark the homework. Now, this can't be good. But I'm very confident this whole thing's about to go bang because the valuations are off the charts. The return on investment is not really there. I think there's going to be quite a sort of major correction here. And it's like most things. We get terribly excited about anything that's new. We try it for a while. It's the Gartner hype cycle. We get terribly excited, the peak of inflated expectations. This is going to change the world. And after a while, we realize that it's either quite boring or doesn't quite do what we thought it would do, or doesn't quite work very well, or is phenomenally expensive. And we either abandon it or we sort of work out how to use it properly. And also the technology improves so that we can use it in a better way. And then kind of it just becomes invisible. It's just something we use. It's like electricity. Well, yeah, it's there. I use it. It's no big deal. So I think we sort of need to remove our sort of strange glasses about this and just sort of see it for what it is, and fundamentally don't trust it. There are biases galore in AI systems, and they lie, as we know. They make stuff up, and they can't justify what they get right, let alone what they get wrong. For your area, this sort of morality thing here is, the idea of moral machines is really quite frightening because complete lack of accountability. They don't know if they're right or wrong. They can't explain their actions. They have no concept of right or wrong. So using it as a tool to do something with our brains fully switched on is absolutely fine. But the great danger here is that artificial intelligence, which I would argue at the moment isn't particularly artificial and isn't particularly intelligent. There are people behind this stuff, and it's not that intelligent. But nevertheless, the artificial intelligence we have right now is going to create a sort of culture of artificial stupidity where people, they won't think, or they don't think, or they can't think. And again, you are seeing the sort of early signs of this. We're not bothered about remembering anything anymore. We don't need to. We don't need to. You could argue, oh, this was calculated in school in the 70s. People thought everyone was going to collapse because people couldn't do mental maths. It didn't. You could take this back to Roman times when people were worried about, the youth of today, or, Gutenberg and what the printed book would do, which it did, by the way, to some extent. But yeah, I think there's a sort of a danger there, and we've got to be very, very careful. But there is an element of it being flavor of the month here. I mean, I think quantum computing could be far more impactful than an AI, for example. I mean, the two pretty synergistic, actually. But I just think we're a bit obsessed with it because it threatens, as I said earlier, artificial intelligence potentially threatens our idea of what it is to be human. That's why we're getting all of this stuff. I mean, the idea of general intelligence and superintelligence where it takes over, I'm not worried about that. I mean, first of all, I think weak AI is far more dangerous than strong AI because we blindly trust it. And very strong AI, I don't see why it would necessarily behave badly. I mean, I think it could be an issue around we have absolutely no idea what it's saying to us. I mean, why would we necessarily? But yeah, I think that we're in a sort of slight danger period at the moment, the bottleneck, but we will hopefully get through the bottleneck.
Richard, I love your statement just now that weak AI is more dangerous than strong AI. I think that's a classic comment. I love it. I want to move on to creativity now. So in your book, Digital versus Human, you argue for the enduring value of human imagination. With generative AI producing art, literature, music, do you think many people are at risk of confusing mimicry for true creativity? And if so, what should we be doing about it? Should there be some sort of watermarking that says,
Yeah,
this isn't human?
to argue this backwards, 100%. Things should be labeled as human generated or machine generated without a
Or a
shadow.
combination?
Or, well, that's probably a more realistic one, combination of the two. Can people tell the difference? Not really. Do people care? Most people, not really. I mean, if you look at music, popular television, popular film, a lot of popular literature, it might as well be written by a machine. It's garbage. It's formulaic, and it will be written by a machine. I have no question about that whatsoever. There will be top grossing movies, music, books written by AI within a year or two. I have no doubt about that. I don't think the top end needs to worry. I mean, I was reading something recently about whether machines could write novels. Well, of course they can. They already do. But they don't understand deep characterization. I mean, let's just go backwards a bit here. This is an illusion. It's an illusion of intelligence. It's a mirror. And it's projecting our own feelings back to us. It's plagiarizing at scale and linking things together. I mean, this is a mathematical model that recognizes patterns and can put things back together in probabilistic ways. And it's essentially a giant cut and paste of the internet, and it's very well done. And it can persuade people that it's written by a human or whatever. But you start to see through it pretty quickly. I mean, first of all, machine intelligence and human intelligence are very different things. We're embodied. It would be a big one. We have, eyes, noses, mouths, ears, hands, feet. By the way, we also have more than one system of intelligence. Our immune system is a form of intelligence. We have culturally inherited intelligence. We tend to see the broader context. But the fundamental point here, to my mind, is that we're alive. We are born and we die. And we have a conception of what that feels like. I mean, there's a wonderful scene with Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting with Matt Damon. It's called the park bench scene. And Matt Damon is kind of AI in this because he's super, super, super intelligent. He knows everything. But as Robin Williams says, you can't tell me what it smells like. inside the Sistine Chapel. You can't tell me what it feels like when somebody you love dies. And that's absolutely it. Now, if you can't understand that, how can you write about it? How can you paint about it? How can you create music about it? So yeah, 95% of it, fine. Make it by machines. Most people don't care. And whether that's a problem or not, maybe that's a bigger discussion for another time. But I think there will remain things that are created by humans that are deeply human. In the meantime, I'm really pissed off because AI is reading all of the stuff I write as training material and then selling it to people for profit. Do I get a cent of that? No, I don't. They didn't even ask my permission. So I'm pretty pissed off about that personally. I mean, I'm not really, but didn't sell that many books anyway. So that there is a sort of an issue there. But again, collaboration. I mean, it is possible that an AI system will come up with some extraordinary artwork in the future. And I did an animation about this a long time ago. And you've got to remember also that art or anything else is culturally defined. A piece of great art is great when we collectively, culturally decide it is. So that will be a human cultural decision if we decide that something created by a machine is great art. But at the moment, I mean, yeah, I've been playing around with things where I'll take a photograph of my dog and I'll ask AI to turn it into a Rembrandt of my dog, distinguishable to my untrained eye. Picasso, boom, indistinguishable. The point, though, to my naive mind, and I could be wrong here, is that because the AI mirror is pointing backwards and it's looking for patterns, of course it's good at copying things. Could AI have come up with cubism? I very much doubt it, because that wasn't about pattern recognition. That was about breaking a paradigm. It was illogical, didn't make any sense at all. So I don't think an AI system could have come up with that. I could be wrong. I'd be delighted to be proved wrong about that. And so I think there are some things that will remain deeply human. And actually, the really good thing about AI, I think a couple of things. First of all, it's going to, I wrote about this in one of my books, Digital versus Human. Really good AI will shine a very, very strong spotlight on what we're all about. What are humans all about? What does it mean to be human? What is it actually at the end of the day that we're really good at that remains? That's a really good thing. And the other thing that really good automation, I think, will do is raise the value of certain kinds of deeply human care. Care being one of them, actually. People that look after other people. I think that could be valued far more in the future. And I think people will value humans more in a future where machines are a significant component.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you use Shannon Furlor's book title, The AI Mirror. It's a mirror on what we've done. It's not even what we're doing right now. It's historic.
Can I put that, by the way, I think is one of the best books, AI Mirror.
It is.
Sharon, I've forgotten, Brad.
Vallor, Vallor.
Yeah. And she makes a really good point, which for a moral philosopher, I'm sure you love, which is that as you say, everything is pointing backwards. It's looking at where we've been, the mistakes we've made. It doesn't have moral imagination or courage. And for human progress, we need to go forward. We need to break those patterns, avoid making those mistakes again. And it can't do that because of the fact it's looking backwards.
Precisely. But what it can do, the question I'm going to ask next is, it is a mirror on the best in us, but also the worst in us. And how can we use that mirror so that we can all look at ourselves collectively in the mirror and say, this is who we are, for good or ill, and this is how the bad bits of us are actually running towards an existential crisis.
Well, suppose
is anybody doing that?
Not that I'm aware. I'm sure somebody is, but I'm not aware of it. First of all, the first problem is what's good and what's bad is subjective judgment. So how are you going to work that out? But if you can work that out, then yes, that's just an algorithm, or you tweak an algorithm to bring out the good stuff. That's not hard. But the problem, I think, is that it's easier to optimize an algorithm for bad things than good things. I mean, this is what social media are doing, right? The things that create engagement on a platform are things that make you really angry. I mean, things that make you laugh are up there, although we're not really talking about things that make you laugh. We're talking about, oh, by the way, that's something that AI is really bad at, is humor, original humor, hopeless. Two AI systems walk into a bar. Barman says, "What do you want?" The AI system said, "What everyone else is having." Boom, boom. Um, Completely forgot what I'm saying now. Yeah. So the optimization for good. Yeah. I mean, there's something about the way the human brain is wired that fear and anger are really easy to engage. Whereas, and humor up to a point, but trying to get people to engage with beauty, aesthetic beauty, is a bit more difficult. And then the really tricky thing, I think you're alluding to there, is how do you get people to engage with things that are morally correct or morally good or morally courageous or imaginative? Wow, that's that. And I don't know. It must be possible, but and I wish we were doing it. Don't know. Don't know.
And I'm just wondering as you're saying that, but I do want to move on to another subject. So, philosophers, neuroscientific philosophers, are actually looking at descriptive ethics, which is the sort of behaviors that tend to result in good outcomes for most people most of the time. That could be quite a good area. And one of those things that we've discussed elsewhere on the podcast is actually a return to much smaller communities where we know each other. You know, the tribal system, the Robin Dunbar maximum size of 150 people in a tribe, and so on and so forth. And that's something you've left me with, and I hope our listeners with, in terms of, how can we use this AI mirror in a very honest way. I do want to move on to, you are a futurist as well as a philosopher, a speaker, and an author. So I want you to look into the future and look at two scenarios, one optimistic, one pessimistic. What would they both look like? Let's go with pessimistic first.
Well, yeah, isn't it funny though that pessimism's dead easy? I mean, I could give you 200. I mean, look at sci-fi, right? How many dystopic sci-fi books, films can you manage? I'd run out of paper. Optimistic utopian sci-fi. I'm stuck after Star Trek, pretty much. Why is that? Don't know. Maybe it's to do with the it's an easier sort of bits of the brain to light up. I don't know. Basically, if you've read Surveillance Capitalism, that it is Orwellian. We would be augmented with machines. So we would have Google smart contact lenses in our eyes that are overlaying reality. So there's no shared reality anymore. And we all see things literally different because they're all overlain differently based on what a machine or a corporation knows about us. We'll have earbuds in, which is a brain computer interface. So we don't even need to talk anymore to a machine or another person. We can communicate simply by thinking, which is a frightening prospect in terms of mental privacy, because anything you think could be grabbed. I mean, you might say that's a good thing. I mean, for example, if you think of China and their social credit system, which on one level is not a bad idea, and they're trying to sort of optimize for people behaving in certain ways. At the moment, you get into trouble if you post certain things about the migrant hotels on X or Facebook. In the future, you might just have to think it, and you'd be in prison. So you'd have all of this sort of tech around you, and you would be sort of blindly following what people tell you to do the entire time. You have no collective sense. You have no sense of memory. Fundamentally, you don't think. We are unable to form relationships with other human beings. It's a sort of hugely hyper individualistic society. Some might say empowered individualism. Everything would be hyper personalized. The planet would be shot to pieces, although maybe AI has solved all that by then. And I mean, some people, the fantasists in Silicon Valley would have us sort of dissolve into our machines. I mean, we'll start off by integrating the machines in our bodies, which, to be fair, we've been doing for a very long time. Clothes, watches, pacemakers, this is nothing new. But to deal with the machines, we'd integrate the machines into us. And then some people believe we can sort of, this fantasy that we can sort of upload, download consciousness into a machine and live forever. That's the sort of the dystopic one. It's a sort of cross between the Matrix. I don't know. The Matrix is pretty good, actually. Maybe it's just the Matrix. Utopian. Wow.
Can I
Well,
nudge you here with that, Richard?
beg your pardon?
Can I nudge you on that?
Yeah.
Because what I'm thinking, and I'd love your answers to this, maybe the best of us is already around us, but because news feeds and social media focuses on the bad stuff, the fear-driven stuff, maybe the best future for us in the way that we use any technology we already have. We're just not talking about it, celebrating it, amplifying it.
There is a thing that old is rubbish and anything new is great, but actually the reason a lot of things are old is because they're unbelievably good.
Mm.
And it's very encouraging, actually, that we are swinging back to sort of live music and vinyl and writing with pens on paper and going to live music events and all the rest of it. I mean, maybe the utopian one for me is first of all, there is a shift away from me to we. There is a shift away from the globally connected to the locally connected, as you say. I mean, it's noticeable that my behavior, I live largely in a small village, and I'm lovely to everybody because I'm going to see them the whole time. If I'm in London and somebody honks me, I'm going to give them the finger out the window and be really rude because I'm never going to see them again. So I behave much better in small groups than big groups. So yeah, a shift towards the collective. I mean, the problem with the word collective is has echoes of sort of communism, whatever. Shift away from me to we, and we are nudged into. No, actually, first of all, there's a grand project. We know where we're going. There's a collective sense of identity, and there is a collective sense of where we're trying to get to, which I think we've completely lost now. Everything is short term. Identity is fragmented. We don't really know why we're here, where we're going, but we've solved that. And then maybe we have kind technologies that nudges in certain directions. For example, here's a crazy one. If I've got smart contact lenses connected to the internet in my eyes, or even if I'm walking around with a smartphone in my pocket with a camera facing outwards, or I'm wearing Meta's glasses harvesting data from the entire world, they can see my interaction with other human beings. Now, what if I got paid a tenth of a penny every time I smiled at another human being? That might change my behavior. It might change your behavior. It might change everybody's behavior. You could nudge. I mean, this is kind of a good version of the Chinese social credit system. You could optimize good behavior and good deeds, either with straightforward payment or with something else, or access to certain things. That could be done, and that would be pretty good. But I mean, the other thing is, I think it's pretty flippin' obvious these days that vast amounts of money don't make you happy. It's connecting with other people. It's being helpful. It's being of use, essentially. It's doing something useful and helping other people seems to be what makes people happy ultimately, particularly as they get a bit older. So let's sort of optimize for that in some way. I mean, and the end of the sort of globalized, overconnected, monolithic. I mean, I feel awful about what's happening globally, but I'm more likely to want to help people on my doorstep. And although you really want to do both, obviously. But so ways, I mean, I'm thinking of a really good example here. I don't know if it still exists. There was an app years ago, more than 10 years ago. You go for a run. You go pretty much on the same route every morning or evening. You run past all these houses. You've got no idea who's in them. Absolutely none. Imagine if there was some app, and this did exist for a while, maybe it still does. It told you certain people lived in certain places and they'd love you to knock on the door and ask if they're okay. Older people living on their own. How good is that? And that's where the transparency is a good thing. It's opening stuff that we couldn't see before, and it's connecting us in ways that are meaningful and useful. So stuff like that would be fantastic. I'd also personally like a return to old ways in a lot of ways. We don't need, and we just bought a dishwasher recently. It's doing my head in. It's so unsustainable. I mean, there's one wash that's 3.5 hours. How is that sustainable? I could wash the dishes in 10 minutes by hand. It beeps at me the whole time. Let's I think washing by hand's probably a bit much, but if rather than buying a dryer, let's sort of wait until there's a nice sunny day with a bit of wind and we'll stick them on the line. There's a lot of old ideas out there that are really good ideas, and I think we should embrace them. I think we should embrace a degree of desirable difficulty in our lives. We should seek out things that take time. I mean, that's the other thing about AI, I think. A lot of it is responding to things that don't really need to be done, where it's all around convenience, half of it. I can't be asked to go to Tesco, which is going to take me half an hour. I'll get it delivered in 15 minutes. Now, it could be, yeah, okay, maybe I'm working in a hospital and I really don't have any time, and it's a really useful thing. But I think for most people, this stuff is because they're bone idle, quite frankly. They're lazy, and we don't need it. We really don't. Get yourself over to the supermarket. You might meet your future partner. I don't know.
Love it. So we're coming towards the end of our discussion. And by the way, thank you so much for finding all of those optimistic scenarios, because it is harder. You're absolutely right. The phrase from me to we, I absolutely agree with from a moral philosophical perspective. And this is very controversial. So I'll be interested in your take on this. I think the human rights movement has got it back to front because it focuses on the individual. Whereas if you're going to have a functioning family or community, it's not about our rights, it's about our duties towards each other. And I actually do believe that from a moral philosophical point of view, that's actually where we need to go back to, because historically we've always been duty led. And in fact, in many ways, you can argue that some aspects of Chinese society are more like that because Confucianism was always based on duty rather than rights. So, just on that point, very quickly, do you think, from a moral philosophy perspective, there's an opportunity there to harness AI, as you said, to enable us to rebuild those local
Yeah,
connections?
I think so. I mean, we haven't talked about religion here. One of the problems potentially is the sort of collapse of religion in some countries in some ways. And maybe, AI is, I mean, I've heard the phrase blessed by the algorithm recently, which is kind of interesting to me. I also, by the way, just going off completely a tangent, I saw a great piece of graffiti the other day. Make humans great again. How good is that? I mean, so I'm going off flying off here. But the other thing I think you've got to do though, you've got to fundamentally change capitalism. I mean, at the moment, we need to shift away from profit to principle. At the moment, it's extract as much money in a shorter period of time as humanly possible. And that is, it's not just destroying the planet, it's destroying people's lives. And we need to sort of shift it towards sort of moral purpose. Corporations should have a moral purpose beyond simply making money. But in the current system, you're not going to be able to do that. It's all about the money. So you're going to have to somehow destroy that. Or more likely, in my mind, there's going to be the most enormous financial collapse you've ever seen, possibly sparked by tech overvaluation, by the way, or American debt or whatever. You need it to collapse before you rebuild it. You need a bit of Schumpeter's creative disruption going on there. The
Mm.
Silicon Valley loves moving fast and breaking things. Okay, so let's break this then. And then we can build it up from the ground up. I mean, I thought we were going to get that a little bit in 08, 09, but we didn't. We just stuck sticking plasters on it and carried on as normal. So we could get that if things collapse and we build it from the ground up. From where we are right now, it's that old joke, isn't it? How do I get there? Oh, you can't get there from here. It is deeply problematic, but I think that is exactly what we need. And again, I think I saw that very briefly in at the beginning of the pandemic. Unless you were a sort of a delivery essential worker, medic, whatever, you were at home with time on your hands for the first time in your life, or certainly your adult life. And it created this period of intense introspection about, why am I here? Why am I doing this job? Do I like this job? Do I like my wife? Do I like my husband, partner, kids? Whatever. Really quizzed at a deep level, from a philosophical point of view, what is a good life? We were asking that question because we had the time to ask it. And then it kind of actually, it probably isn't going to kill me. It'll be fine. Let's go back to work or work from home. And it kind of disappeared. And we need to think about this rather than being distracted by these AI enabled flipping funny cat videos or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And you reminded us all about the Chinese hieroglyphics for crisis.
Same thing. Opportunity from memory.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm going to ask you a final question, which is very practical for our listeners. In a way, if we wait for everyone else to do something, it'll never happen unless it's triggered by a crisis. So for our listeners, I'm going to ask you to challenge all of us with one, two, or three things you think we should be doing in the way we use or don't use AI, and the way we should rediscover our humanity or amplify our humanity.
Well, I'm for the sake of argument, I'm going to conflate AI with smartphones. Well, but by the way, I don't think people. It's like AI is. Oh, it's this new thing that's shown up. No, it's Google Maps, it's Netflix recommendations. It's been around for spell check, for God's sake. Okay, first thing, and people aren't going to like this. Get rid of email off your smartphone. Disable it. Only look at email on your laptop. It will change your life because you will only theoretically be able to look at email when you're in the office. I mean, I know that people look at it on the train, but you really shouldn't. That would be my first thing. Get rid of email on your smartphone. Don't look at it. Don't use it. I would ritualize time with nothing to do. Diarize it. I don't care how often people do it. Once a day is probably a bit too much, but maybe once or twice a week. Stick half an hour, maybe an hour. And what's that great quote? I should run across and grab my book. It's in the front. As if you know. Okay, if you're quite busy, get half an hour. If you're really busy, get an hour. If that makes any sense. And do nothing. Just stare out of a window. Go for a walk in nature. That's a good one. Find some greenery. Go and walk through some trees. If you can't do that, do something with your hands. Weed the garden. Wash some dishes. Do a scribble with a pencil on a piece of paper. Let your mind drift. And answers will come to you, I promise. What else? I would read AI Mirror. I think that's a phenomenally good book. If you want to scare yourself silly, you could read Surveillance Capitalism. Talk to people you don't know. Talk to people that disagree with you about something, and do something that helps other people.
Love it. Love it. Richard, thank you for being such a brilliant guest on ChatRog. I knew you would be, and for giving us such fascinating insights. I mean, there's so many things you said, but I think some of the things that stick in my mind are the fact this is going to crash, tiny yields, and in fact negative yields in many of the tech stocks. I mean that there is a big crash coming in AI stocks, and that's going to make the 2007-8 crash look like a tea party. Unaccountable bureaucracies with no people could ultimately lead to fully autonomous weapons of mass destruction as well as weapons of mass deception, which we have. But on the plus side, you explain why backwards-looking AI will never come up with concepts like cubism. And I think the way that you addressed the from me to we is incredibly powerful, and that's deeply philosophical. So although when I first met you, you called yourself a futurist, you are a true philosopher, and I thoroughly recommend all of our audience to share this podcast widely with family and friends. So to our audience, thank you for downloading this. This is available both as an audio and a video podcast in all the usual places. If you are normally a listener but would actually like to watch the conversation, search for ChatRog on YouTube. You might also want to look at my favorites, which are cat videos, real cat videos. They make me feel good because actually cats are far more intelligent than any AI that we've invented so far. If you'd like to take our discussion to somewhere where watching is difficult, download the audio version and listen to it while you're walking around the countryside or on your way to work. We really appreciate your feedback. Please comment on the podcast. We're new at this and your thoughts are really valuable. And it helps enormously with the algorithm if you like and subscribe. And if you feel so moved, please leave us a 5-star review. Join us next time as we continue the ChatRog question, not just to find out how we are using AI, but how we should or shouldn't be using AI for a better future for humanity and all life on Earth. Thank you, Richard.
I'm sorry. The reason I'm giggling is nothing you said. And I'm not sure if a AI would come up with this, but a chicken just walked into my office. I don't know if you picked that up on the audio and then just walked off.
A chicken walked into Richard's office.
Well,
we can leave this in as an outtake.
We've got a farm behind us, right? A sheep farm, and there are chickens. And for many years, I had this sort of dream that the chickens would come into the garden and root around in my vegetable patch and get rid of the slugs. And you've got to be really careful what you wish for because they started coming in. So I started feeding them, and now they won't go.
I love it. I love it. What a wonderful end to this podcast. AI could never come up with that.
I don't think so. No.
Richard, thank you so much.
I'm trying. That's so funny. Oh,
no,
God.
It is wonderful. It's wonderful.
Anyway, thank you, Roger. Thank you, audience.
You're very welcome.